What's up, everybody? Mike with Patriot Energy, formerly KLN Solar. I'm here with Jason Dulle from SolarEdge, one of our great partners, here to talk about the SolarEdge Home Ecosystem and specifically their batteries. And, hear from Jason what he thinks are some of the advantages of the SolarEdge batteries. So, Jason, if you don't mind, give us a quick introduction and something unique about yourself.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Mike. I'm based in Los Angeles. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, though. So I've been out in California now for, I think it's about 12 years now. Been in solar now for a little over 3 years. And at SolarEdge for about the same time. I actually started the day we went on lockdown here in LA for COVID. So it was a very interesting time to, start a new job, new company, new career, everything. But it's been great. And, I'm really excited to be here today and ultimately really excited to work with Power and the team out there. So something interesting about myself. I'm a big golfer. I grew up playing the game, and it's been something that's been in my family. We all play and all that kind of thing. So at any chance I can, trying to get out there and, get outside and enjoy the game. So that's definitely one of my favorite things to do out there.
Awesome. Well, maybe you can give me some lessons sometimes. I can hit the ball pretty hard, but I have no idea where it's going.
Me too. That's the fun part, though.
Yeah.
New adventure every time.
Top golf, not necessarily for real golf.
Exactly.
Cool. So you guys call your system now the SolarEdge Home Ecosystem, rather than just referring to it as a battery. Just give me an overview. In a nutshell, what is this SolarEdge Home Ecosystem?
Sure. Yeah. So, if you think about it, like where we're really at in solar right now, we're not just selling solar, right? The world is really migrating to a smart energy world, right? And the ecosystem is really the heart of it all. So for SolarEdge, we call it the SolarEdge Home system. And effectively, previously we always just sold inverters, but now we also sell batteries and EV chargers, and it's all integrated directly into the inverter. So the batteries and the EV charger directly get wired into the inverter. And what that allows for now is a lot more control, and so if you think about sort of the Apple approach, right, you log into your iPhone, your computer, and they all sync together, right? The hardware and the software is built to integrate correctly together, right? And so a lot of the approach here is the same, it's the idea that we're building the hardware, and so we're going to build the software too. And that means that the homeowner is just going to get ultimately much better experience. And what it really comes down to is essentially how the system operates as a whole. So instead of like solar operating in isolation and batteries operating in isolation, they're all working together. So effectively, for instance, like if the system is in backup mode, because the EV charger and the battery are all wired into the inverter, and the system will know how much the house is consuming in that time, how full the car battery is, how full the residential storage battery is, and all that. It'll be intelligently deciding where do I send power. So if the batteries are full, it might send power to the car to make sure that we don't lose any energy. And so it's a way of really giving the homeowner significantly more integrated and better experience as they make one of the most expensive, investments in their home as they can.
Yeah, that's awesome. And here in Florida, we have a lot of outages, so backup's a big thing. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. But the idea of not wasting energy is pretty awesome. I know my system. On a nice sunny day, my battery is usually full by 11 o'clock or noon. And if I don't have a grid to export to, it'd be nice to at least have something I can do with that electricity. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. So just to follow up and get a little more in depth, as a company, you guys are the only major DC coupled battery system on the market. Tell me, is this an advantage? And if it is, why?
Absolutely. A lot of the market has gone AC coupling, as we say it, right? So you might have a microinverter underneath each panel. You might have a battery that also has inverters inside of it, an AC coupled battery and the like there. And so there's a lot of advantage that come with a DC coupled architecture. And some of those core ones are essentially more production, and essentially that's through higher efficiency and clipping avoidance. If you think about it, every solar system is actually a DC system, right? A module produces DC power. A battery is actually a native DC storage device as well. And so because we're not converting power multiple times, meaning, power at the roof level, converting it from DC to AC, converting it again at the battery from AC to DC, and then once again to convert it from DC to AC for the home, that just results in more production. It also means then that we're not going to clip energy. So if you have a higher production module on a smaller microinverter, for instance, anything that produces higher, if the module produces above that microinverter is clipped and lost. And we're walking into a world where capturing as much energy as possible is really important, as you hit it on there. And so the other advantage then, to keep it real simple, is really just going to be NPU avoidance. We can put a whole lot more solar on a smaller breaker. So like on a 20 amp breaker, for instance, with batteries, we can put up to 7.6 kilowatts of solar on the roof. So most other systems might be capped at 4.5, 5 kW. And as you start seeing larger system sizes, and as you start seeing the need for more solar batteries, et cetera, that all adds more AC power to the home and has large implication on the main panel there.
Awesome. And, I'm sure this is something we're going to talk about a little bit later, but that can be huge with some of the retrofit and expansion stuff that is coming up in NEM3 in California. For example. But,
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Just for people who are watching this and don't know, we're using some industry jargon here, AC coupled, DC coupled.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Yeah, so it's really, are you on the DC side or are you on the AC side? And to unpack that a little bit more, it comes down to effectively like how much inverters, to keep it really simple, do you have, right? An AC coupled battery will have inverters inside of it. Mm-hmm. And so that was when we talked about the conversion, that's sort of the implication there. On the DC side, what we're doing is we're going to keep power in DC. So module comes down from the roof, and we're going to decide based on what's happening at that moment in time, if there's storage batteries, for instance, do we keep it in DC or do we send it to AC? So effectively, all of our extra components stay on the DC side versus the AC side, if that makes sense. So batteries, there's no inverter, it's just a DC device. And so we keep that power in DC as long as we can with less inversions there.
Okay, cool. So, jumping away from batteries a little bit here, but I think it is important. You're talking about how the energy is coming off the roof and everything, but, there's a lot of people out there that would call you a string inverter. Are you a string inverter?
We like to call ourselves an optimized inverter solution. And so what that means is that, if you kind of look at sort of the migration of technology in solar, string inverters are really the thing that really kicked the industry off in a lot of ways. But they had a challenge, right? The challenge was that if one single module was shaded or down, whatever it was, the whole rest of that string had, would produce at the lowest rate of that single module. So only south-facing roofs and stuff like that were going to be eligible for solar. And so, microinverters came along and kind of solved that problem by putting a microinverter, a small box underneath each module. And so now, instead of having the same implications where if one module shades, the whole string goes down, each panel produces independently. And SolarEdge came along and said, let's take the advantages of both worlds and combine them. So we have an optimizer underneath each panel. And what that does is it basically keeps that power in DC, which, now you get the advantages of a string inverter, of the NPU avoidance, of higher production through higher efficiency, along with the advantages of a microinverter, where you're isolating each panel. So you don't have the same shading impacts that you might have with the string inverter. And so we're an optimized inverter solution, not a string inverter.
Okay, awesome. That's really big to clarify. We really don't see many string inverters left in the major residential world, other than some off brands. And then, of course, Tesla out there telling everyone that string inverters are better for some reason with the white page that they released, which, if you're in for a good laugh, feel free to go take a read. It's actually pretty funny.
I had to take a look at it.
Yeah. So, all right, back to batteries, our main topic. You talked a little bit about the advantages of being directly tied to the inverter on the energy side, right? So being DC coupled. But what about in terms of communication? So, your battery, it's a SolarEdge battery attached to a SolarEdge inverter, and they're in direct communication. How does that compare to a inverter agnostic battery like a Tesla or a Franklin?
Yeah, good question. I mean, it sort of comes back in a lot of ways to the ecosystem question, right? Like, what is an ecosystem? And so there's a lot of advantages that come with an integrated system like this. And, on the software side, obviously, as we talked about, the advantages are that, we're not going to clip stuff like that because we can charge that battery DC energy. But the other advantages that come out of it are outside the controls and the software side of things are really what happens, when you pair, let's say, a third party with our product. The battery effectively has to control the inverter because that's what's going to be powering the house in an outage. And so there can be some limitations in how that system operates because they're not directly integrated. And going back to sort of that ecosystem conversation there, it's sort of like trying to pair an Android with an Apple product, right? You may be able to get some things to work, but it's not going to be the best user experience for the homeowner. And there could be implications in outages, especially extended outages. We have an example, one of our employees, their brother who lives in Santa Cruz, California, when we were having some really severe weather back in, I think it was January or so, they were down for 6 entire days without power, and the system operated the whole entire 6 days without any issues, dark starting, without any issues, and battery draining too fast or anything like that. So there's just a lot of operation issues that can happen when you pair a third-party product with any other inverter product, not just ours. And it's just quite simply because they're not, like, we're not building an inverter product to work with their battery. They're trying to build a battery that would work with our inverter product.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. The analogy that I've heard used sometimes is particularly with Tesla, who's been around the longest, is the battery is almost playing Marco Polo with the inverter. It's, hey, let's send some electricity and see if the inverter answers.
There's certain times where it'll shut down the PV array. Like if the battery power is too full, if the battery is too full, the battery will actually shut down solar production, which is not what you want to happen in an outage, right? Because who knows how long that PV will take until it fires back up again. And in the meantime, you might be losing crucial outage hours of operation there.
Yeah. Another thing that you brought up there, a point that I'd like to elaborate on a little bit. Talk about dark starting. That's another piece of, I guess, industry jargon. What is it? And then what advantages do you guys have there?
Yeah, so dark start capability is really what happens when an inverter can fire up by itself. And so if you look at before we had these fully integrated battery systems, most inverters would require the grid to start up. And so you would need to provide some voltage, some AC voltage, to get a little technical there, to the inverter to start it up, whether it's on grid or off grid. And, when we launched our hub inverter probably about 3 years ago or so, it came out as an inverter that can actually fire up without the grid. And so it was the first inverter, I believe, in the marketplace that actually could do that. And so what that means is that you don't need to send it, a signal to basically fire up. As long as it starts getting a little bit of PV, it'll start up. And that's one of the challenges, I think, that a lot of AC coupled third-party batteries have, is dark starting. Some are operating on a schedule where they'll check in for enough solar power at a certain time, and then they'll turn the battery on. Others are operating differently. And so it just goes back to the idea of a fully integrated product being a much better solution on grid and off grid for homeowners there.
Okay. So hypothetically, if, let's relate this to the real world, right? So we're in Florida, big nasty hurricane comes through, and it comes through first thing in the morning. So you have an entire day with effectively no production. I think when Hurricane Ian hit, I want to say I made like 2 kilowatt hours all day. So I'm running off batteries, and then you have all night to run off of batteries. So you manage to deplete your battery all the way down to its safety threshold. Being a dark start capable inverter, you should still be able to fire back up in the morning, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah, we could have zero battery power and just need a little bit of voltage from the optimizers once they wake up, essentially, and we can start producing power there. Where others may need, a lot of them, I think, are on a timer where it may check in at 10 a.m., 8 a.m., 9 a.m., something like that, and only turn on the battery and the solar if there is enough PV power at that time. So, that's a big challenge now when you start thinking about extended outages, because, if we're selling homeowners the idea that you have battery backup, but we're not talking about how the system's actually going to operate in various scenarios, they're going to have some unhappy experiences there. Bad surprises.
Yeah, for sure. So another thing that kind of just comes up off of that, we're talking about discharging a battery to its limit, which we know is not great for any lithium-ion battery. But when you're in an outage, you care more about your house operating than you do about maybe longevity of your battery, its lifespan. So how does your warranty address that in terms of how much energy can go through it? How deep can I discharge my battery without voiding my warranty, things like that?
Yeah, good question. I mean, that's a very important question to consider, I think, too, because you don't want to be hindered by warranty and how you operate your system. And the reality is some other systems will hinder that. So for us, you can discharge the battery all the way down to zero. So, we're 9.7 kilowatt hour battery, and you can use all 9.7 kilowatt hours. Others may make you reduce that, maybe you can only use 95% or something like that. And all that means is that in an outage, you have less time in backup mode. On the warranty side, the implications get a little deep too. We're out here in Los Angeles right now as we go into NEM3. And the idea is that we're going to cycle a battery all day, every day. And I think there's a future too, where we might be cycling more than once a day as utilities change rate structures and try to use your battery at your home, to their advantage too, to compensate you to use your power. And there is no cycle count or throughput warranty, meaning like you can use your battery as much as you want to, when you want to, and it will not have an impact on the warranty, which is 70% capacity after 10 years. Other batteries will have a throughput warranty where they're going to say you can only use this much energy, and if you run the math on it, that may limit your warranty by 75% of the rate of the years or something like that too. So having a battery that can cycle and be used as many times as you want is a much better long-term solution, and ultimately effectively a great way to add some value as you're selling to the homeowner there.
Yeah. And just to maybe translate that to terms that people might be a little more familiar with. When you buy a car, they give you, let's say a 5-year, 60,000 mile warranty, right? And it's whichever one comes first. This would be the equivalent of them giving you a 10-year warranty, no ifs, ands, or buts, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, no stipulations in the back end. So the way I talk about that too is sometimes there's homeowners who are worried that, year 10, their battery is going to have to be replaced. And, a battery is a consumable item, but ultimately the assurances you have is that at year 10, if you buy a SolarEdge battery, you're going to have 7 kilowatt hours in that battery left to capacity. If not, we'll replace it, and that's a great assurance that you can offer a homeowner. There is no, asterisk or anything like that in the warranty terms that say you can only use your battery at this rate if you want to get this full warranty.
Yeah. So, if they have 2 batteries, for example, in 10 years, maybe we just add a third one to restore your capacity.
Correct.
Or we use one of our financing schemes that we have that have a 25-year battery warranty, like I did here on my house. But that's a topic for future videos. So let's shift to some of the news lately that impacts and the need for batteries. They've been a strong suit for us here in Florida, but we were kind of ground zero because of all the hurricanes and everything. But now we're seeing a need for batteries in other markets that historically have not touched them because they were just an added expense. So things like NEM3 in California, some recent changes in the Carolinas that seem to kind of be copycat NEM3 policies. How are you guys approaching these?
That's a really great question. I mean, and I think overall, to go kind of like wide on this conversation here, like it's sort of a trend that's happening, right? Like what you see in solar is that as a certain area sees a large adoption of solar, the policies start to change, right? It happened in Hawaii, about 5 years or so ago. Hawaii used to have a net metering policy, and then they eliminate that. Now there's no value to the homeowner in exporting their PV solar, so it's all batteries. And that's what happened here in California. That's happening right now in other markets like North Carolina. And I think it's a trend that we need to get used to, because what it's pointing to is one simple thing: batteries will be the ultimate future moving forward. Maybe not all states are going to be incentivizing them now, but ultimately it's something that's really important to consider as a sales rep, I think, because getting familiar with how to sell batteries is going to be, it's going to help make you more effective moving forward. And the way we're approaching that here in California is we're really focusing on a few things. The first one is going to be the software side of things, making things more simple and automated. I'll cover that here in a second. And the other side of things is going to be just making it a more simple install too. We know a lot about backup power, and what that can do and outages and stuff like that. But the reality is the battery isn't really the device that enables backup power. There's other hardware that does that. What a battery does is it really enables you to operate on solar energy longer. So it's like a big bucket of solar energy that you're accumulating throughout the day and using later in the day. And so with NEM3, we're using what we call a grid-tied self-consumption system as one of our products out here. And so what happens there is that as the solar produces throughout the day, any solar that is not being used by the home is being used to charge that battery, because it doesn't make sense to sell that power back to the grid anymore. It's just not cost effective for the homeowner. And so once that, solar starts to limit production as the sun starts going down, then the batteries take over and they start powering the house with those batteries. And so that's a system that doesn't, have backup capability, but it's really a PV only system, but it's a great solution for homeowners because, it's more cost effective and it still allows the homeowner to avoid these really high peak rates that you might see in some markets. Like down in San Diego right now, I think peak rates at this point in time are 83 cents a kilowatt hour. So if you're charging your battery now with solar energy and then discharging into the home instead of buying power at 83 cents a kilowatt hour, it really helps, improve the ROI for the homeowner. And then on the software side, we built what we're calling a smart battery algorithm. And so basically the homeowner, instead of having to set, profiles where I'm going to use my battery at this time this way, the homeowner is going to set what utility they're in and what rate structure they're in. And our system is going to automatically decide based on time of day, that hour, for instance, of the year, is it more advantageous to self-consume this power or is it more advantageous to export it? Because there are times in September where the utility will pay the homeowner over $3 a kilowatt hour to buy their power from their battery. So it's a software and a hardware solution right there.
Yeah, and I can see that becoming really important as we start to get to variable rates that aren't structured. I think there's some places in Texas with them, and I know commercial utility accounts can have this where what you pay is based on the real-time demand of everybody else on that same utility.
Yeah.
If everyone wants electricity, it's a lot more expensive. So for something that, it wouldn't be practical for me as a homeowner to be sitting there watching for me the Duke Energy utility prices and they're charging more now, so I'm going to change my profile. It's good to have something on the back end doing that automatically, and it seems like that's
it's really helpful.
So now taking a little flip here, we've talked about the actual physical product benefits for the homeowner, but historically designing systems with batteries can be complicated, and we all know there's a lot of people who do it wrong. And especially in markets where people are not used to building systems with batteries, what are a couple tips that you can give them?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a great question because in the past it was pretty simple, right? We would ask the homeowner for their bill. We would build a PV system that would offset, the bill to X percentage, right? 110%, 120%, whatever, right? And so when you add batteries now, it gets a little more complicated because you need to understand now the consumption profile of the homeowner. You need to know how they're using their energy, right? So you can size the battery system appropriately there. And so, we've created something I think that's really helpful in addressing that and making sure that the sales rep doesn't need to guess, if you will. And it's our designer tool. So we built a battery modeling software that we, was really targeted at first for NEM3, but obviously it's going to be impactful for every market out there to help size battery systems appropriately for self-consumption. And the way it works is basically, you design the PV array just like you would, and then we take those numbers. You would either import the utility green button data into our modeling tool, or you would ultimately pick one of the, I think it's 5 different consumption profiles that we built. So if it's, a homeowner's got 2 kids, mom and dad are going to work, kids are going to school, the profile might look like something like this, right? Because they're going to consume a little bit of energy throughout the day, but there's a lot of consumption later in the evening. And so we'll then take that production and we'll model it against whatever that consumption profile looks like. And then it'll help determine, do you need 1 battery, 2 batteries? On top of that, then when we talk about the smart battery algorithm, it'll also calculate, based on how many batteries you selected, in those hours, where you can really export energy at a high value. If you have enough extra battery power to calculate how much that's going to return the homeowner as well. And so it really helps answering all those questions for the sales rep and take a lot of the guesswork out of it. It's a great free tool for everyone to use.
Awesome. Yeah. And I've used it. I've been getting some exposure in California, just helping people with batteries. And I've used it out there and very appreciative of the simplicity because that would be something very difficult to wrap your head around manually. When are you using electricity, when are you producing electricity?
Yeah. No homeowners really know that answer, right?
Yeah.
You're like, I just use it,
Yeah, exactly.
And so now we can either crunch the numbers or if you don't have the data available, just go use, one of our self-made profiles and we're good.
Yep. Cool. So I guess one question that popped in my head while you were talking about that with the self-consumption and the system knowing the value of the energy you're producing and knowing the value of the energy you're importing, exporting, et cetera. Do your integrated, your ecosystem products, your EV charger, does that play into it? Does it know, hey, this energy is kind of worthless to export right now, so let's charge the car? Or, electricity is really cheap from the utility right now, so let's import and charge the car overnight and things like that.
Yeah, and we're working on way more software to help facilitate that. So we're building this, we obviously built some great hardware, but the focus now moving forward is going to be heavy on SolarEdge One. It's a new software platform that we're building, and the idea is that instead of letting the homeowner effectively, manage their energy, we're going to build some algorithms where we input all this data, whether it's utility data where it says it's more advantageous to import or export at this time, or if it's like, we want to set a profile where it's going to be self-consumption only, then we make sure we don't export energy. Then we say, okay, the car is plugged in, the battery's full. Let's not export that energy. Let's charge the car instead. We can already do that today. And so that's a full capability. But as we move forward in time with the software platform, a lot of this automation is going to really help address, all these questions that a homeowner may have on how do we operate my system. It's going to start understanding their habits on how they consume energy, and it'll start forecasting based on production, and it'll automate the whole entire process for the homeowner there, which is going to be really helpful too when you start thinking about adding, additional, smart energy appliances into the ecosystem there.
Yeah, and just to put a different perspective, so that's California, right? It's self-consumption because my export's worthless. In Florida, when I hear self-consumption, I'm thinking self-consumption because all of the utility lines are laying in the ground, buried under trees. Something just came through and destroyed everything. The weather's perfectly nice because the storm took all the clouds and weather with it, but we're going to be without power for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And so effectively, we're in self-consumption. You don't have a grid to export to. And I think I've been a big fan of your EV charger. That's why I have one. In the sense of it's really one of the only products out there that I know of where in that outage, I can charge my truck and not have to worry about draining my battery or, trying to back up the 90 or 100 amp breaker that the Ford charger that would, if I would have bought that, good luck backing on a battery system and having the inspector allow it. So just a little different perspective. Are you self-consumption for financial reasons, or are you self-consumption because a hurricane just knocked all the power lines down?
I'll be above. Yeah.
At the end of the day, self-consumption is self-consumption. So the more creative things we can do with the energy means that you have more energy that you're able to harness. So we've put a lot of those in. A lot of people are very excited about it because people buy EVs and they're thinking, great, I don't have to worry about getting gas anymore. But when we have a long-term outage, are you just going to sit at home? Or what happens when you need your car? You need to go get groceries or something like that.
Absolutely.
So we need a way to charge it. So
cool. When the gas stations may not be working too, right?
What's that?
That's a nice. When the gas stations may not be working too, right?
Yeah, for sure. Or if they are working, they've been they're completely dry. And that's a perfect segue into the next question. It's storm season here. I just had yesterday, I believe, there was a pretty good storm in my old neighborhood, which has about 600-700 houses in it at this point. And for a couple hours yesterday afternoon, there were 9 houses in the neighborhood that had electricity. 9 of my clients. So they have batteries. So of course the neighbors all want to know, how can I get batteries now? Because those 9 people had air conditioning at 4:30 in the afternoon in Florida in July, which is a very important thing to have.
No kidding.
So from my perspective sitting here, backup is king for batteries, right? And it's not just here anymore. You talked about your storms in January. The West Coast just had one of the stormiest winters that I've heard about. I was in San Diego in, I think, January for a power event, and I learned that people wear jackets, which we don't. But with all these storms, and the storms seem to be getting more common, they seem to be getting worse. The grid's overtaxed. We all know that, right? Especially here in Florida, where people are moving here in droves and they're turning orange groves into neighborhoods. The grid's already overtaxed, and now we can add storms on top of that. Outages are just going to get more frequent. They're going to last for longer. So backup really becomes an important thing. What gives you an advantage over any of the other batteries on the market for backup specifically?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, a great segue. I mean, I think ultimately a lot of what we talked about today, some of the core things that we can do with the system are really the great advantages, right? So it's really the idea that you're going to get like in backup mode, you'll have much more time in backup mode, right? And that's through not wasting power, right? You're not clipping power. You have higher efficiency, so you're not losing energy through conversions and all that. So all that translates to more backup time, right? And time is what this is really about. And then you got the capability that we talked about with what, the technical term of dark start, right? And so if there's an extended outage, you have assurances that the system's going to fire up no matter what, right? There's not going to be some limitations on time and when they can fire the system up or anything like that. So, and then you get the advantages of like we were talking about the car charging and everything else, right? These are really great things to start thinking about for homeowners, because if we do start seeing more outages and they are extended, a homeowner now has freedom to operate their life in a backup system as they would hope to on grid too. And so it's really a culmination, I think, of the ecosystem and the hardware that we've been talking about here today.
Yeah, awesome. And to take maybe a little deeper dive into the EV side. And actually, I wrote this question before you guys had a big news announcement on it. So
yeah,
good predictive timing.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of excitement out there. Ford released their lightning extended range, saying, hey, you can run your house for an unreasonable amount of days off of the battery in here. But that's cool, right? You got this big battery parked in the driveway, and now they're saying, okay, you don't need a generator anymore. You can power your house from your vehicle. And I think Kia is doing the same now, and I'm sure others are going to follow. But like I mentioned before, people think of it that way, from the electricity coming from the car to the home. But what happens when that runs out? That's not legally keeping your solar producing on its own right now. If I had the Ford Pro Charger for my truck, that wouldn't keep my solar producing. So I have the energy in my truck, and that's that.
Yeah.
So you get an extended outage, say after a hurricane, some sort of bidirectional charging, as they call it, that also keeps the solar online. Could be a really cool solution. Is something on the horizon?
You bet. Yeah. So we just announced this probably a couple weeks or so ago. I think maybe a little bit longer. We'll be coming out with a bidirectional DC EV charger, and it's going to be an awesome product. And, like all the things that we talked about here today, DC coupling and all that is really leveraging that idea along with what you're talking about there, the bidirectional nature. So not only can we now, charge from the grid or whatever, but we can also send power to the house. And so, the charger itself is going to be DC and it actually can charge up to 24 kilowatts. So when you think about, your truck, for instance, and fast charging, we can now basically pull excess solar power directly DC from the modules, and we can supplement that with AC power as well if we need to, like on grid, obviously. But the advantage there is going to be obviously more efficiency, and you're bypassing the charger and the inverter inside the car, and you're providing DC power directly from the sun into the car. And there's no other charger out there right now that can be able to do that. And that's, again, just going back to the whole ecosystem approach. And so, and I think we start thinking about bidirectional. I think it's going to be an awesome product for extended outages too, right?
Mm-hmm.
I questioned a lot of the idea of powering your house with your car, because what happens if you're in extended outage and you need to go somewhere, right? If you consumed your car battery and you have no gas left in the tank, then, where you can't drive, right? And so by having storage batteries on the wall that you're using, like, let's say, and like we talked about, like in a self-consumption mode, then you have the supplemental EV battery where if you need to power something else for whatever reason, you can start supplementing the PV plus the storage battery with EV power as well. And so that's going to be a pretty cool product, not only just because of the amount of power that we can charge a car natively DC, but also obviously just the ability to take some of that extra power out of the battery and use it as needed.
Yeah. I'm really excited about it, and I want one the second it comes out. But I mean,
you got it.
First of all, the DC charging, again, it's the same efficiency thing we talked about. Instead of charging your home batteries more efficiently, now you're charging your vehicle more efficiently.
Yeah.
There's a reason why the fast chargers that you go to at the electric gas stations, if you will, are DC.
Yeah.
You can get more energy across quicker without losing. But really what excites me about this is now, instead of having to put a whole ton of batteries on the wall, I have 139 kilowatt hours parked in the driveway.
Yep.
I can have a smaller battery on my house that checks the box legally to keep the solar online. So the solar is still producing. If I need to go somewhere, I don't have to turn my house off to drive somewhere. But when I'm there, take advantage of it. Cycle that truck out. EVs aren't cheap. You paid for that battery, so the more use you can get out of it, the better. So that I'm really excited to see where that goes. That was one of the most exciting product launches, which you can tell I'm a nerd that I get excited about a little accessory more so.
I love it.
One of the big products, but really cool to see.
Yeah, it's what really gets me excited to be here at SolarEdge. I mean, again, everything that we're doing in renewable energy is really DC, right? A module is DC, a residential storage battery is DC power, and so is an EV, right? Mm-hmm. And anytime you convert energy, you lose energy. And so, if you're powering your battery in your car off of DC solar, you get to drive further now too, because you're not losing efficiency through conversions and all those kind of things. And it's really, I think, in my opinion, like the true culmination of like the SolarEdge Home Ecosystem, where we keep everything in DC, and we don't lose energy as a result of it too, because now we can directly charge everything in DC. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess we'll close out with this last thing. Just wondering if you can hint at any exciting new products or accessories that are coming out.
Absolutely.
We're doing a lot with smart panels and things like that. So what do we have to look forward to on the horizon besides that awesome charger?
Yeah, great question. I mean, we're fully integrated with SPAN and have been for a while. So that's a great product, and homeowners love it. Really premium main service panel, effectively, that can do a whole lot to help obviously power house and in outages and on grid too. So we're fully compatible with that. But on our side of things, not only do we have the DC charger coming out, but we'll be launching some smart load controllers and smart sockets. And we'll also be launching a smart water heater. And so on the smart load controllers and sockets, the idea there is that, you put a device on whatever you want to control, whether it's an air conditioner or anything like that. And the homeowner can now basically control that device via their My SolarEdge app. They can also see how much power is consuming too. And because we can see it too, we can start automating some flows in the house, if you will, on what turns on, what doesn't, and what slows down and what ramps up. Mm-hmm. And then the smart water heater, it's just another effort to ensure that we don't lose excess solar when we're in these, self-consumption worlds, as everything seems to be migrating. And so effectively, if there's, excess solar being produced and, the car is not plugged in, or it is and it's full, the storage battery is full, and there's still more power that's being produced than the home can consume at that moment, then we can start sending that power to a smart water heater that'll heat up a water tank too. And so it's another effort to say, like, it doesn't make sense to sell power back to the grid. So let's find a way to use it in the home. And these are all going to be great advantages of a DC coupled system.
Yeah. And I think the other one that I heard about, which you 100% stole this idea from me, by the way. I've been saying for a while that they need to come up with a smart thermostat, something like a Nest that is able to control my air conditioner, because here you can't really lose your air conditioning for a long period here in Florida. But you do have to ration your energy sometimes, especially during the thick of the storm. And rather than the homeowner having to watch the app, I'm producing well, and turn the AC down and then turn it back up at different times, I thought, hey, it'd be great. We got these smart thermostats. What if it could just read my production and do that? And it sounds like you have something like that coming out now too.
Yeah, there's a lot of products like that we're looking at. There's nothing I can share right now, unfortunately, but that's all in our best interest, right? Because the more we can control a lot of that and understand what's happening in the home, and HVAC is a large consumer of power in the home, the better it's going to be for everybody, right? And so stay tuned. We have a lot of other things that we're looking at that I think y'all are really going to love down the road here.
Awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule.
Thanks for having me.
On behalf of everyone who's going to get some value out of this. And if you're watching this and you want to put some solar in your house or some batteries to protect your home, or you have some questions, feel free to reach out, Mike at patriotenergy.us. And if you are in the solar industry and you just need some help with batteries, I'm more than happy to do that as well. Jason, I don't know if you want to share your contact info, or if you're a power seller, you can always reach him at his office hours as well.
Yep, we have office hours at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern time every week. It's on the power calendar. So we'd love to have you on. Each week we'll cover a different topic, and feel free to bring any questions. If you have systems that you're working on and you want some support, some questions that are answered, we'll be there for you at that time every week on Thursdays.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks again, and have a great week.
Thank you, Mike. Take care. Thanks.